Good afternoon and welcome. Very happy to be here, and thank you very much for the organizers to also allow us to have this panel on European foreign policy. I'm Fabian Zulik. I'm the Chief Executive of the European Policy Center, which is a Brussels-based independent think tank. I will introduce the speakers as we go along, but we have a great panel to discuss the EU's role in global transitions. To start with, what is the global picture? We've already heard during the forum about the multipolar world in which we are, and the significant fragmentation and polarization which we're facing in Europe, but also across the world. Of course, for Europeans, there's always the war in the background, the illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is putting the whole of the EU's security at risk. At the same time, we have fundamental transformations, the demographic transformation, which we probably won't go into in too much detail, but certainly also a technology transformation, a technology revolution, and a global sustainability challenge with climate change remaining an existential issue. So it's a world where we need cooperation, but it's also a world of competition. It's a world where security is playing a much greater role, where we're seeing conflict coming back, and where we're seeing that in many countries, my country first, in its various forms, is becoming the most important motto again. Europeans have been particularly challenged by this. Interdependence, economic interdependence, has been the foundation of the European Union. But what we've also seen in the last years, in particular with Russia's invasion, is the weaponization of interdependence and what that means for our security. So there is a recognition that things have to change, that there's a need for reform. But what kind of reform is possible in this very challenging environment? And in particular, how can we work together with partners from right across the globe? How can we deliver global public goods from climate change to maritime security, from food security to global sustainable development? And what is the role of the EU in this? Both the EU in form of its member states, but also the EU in form of its institutions. So a big topic, and I will be asking each one of the speakers to come in at the beginning, and then we'll have a discussion here, but I'm also hoping we have enough time for discussion with the audience. So if you have any particular questions, please keep them in mind for later on. But I'll start with Xavier Bettel, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Luxembourg, to explain a bit how you see the global environment and Europe's role in that.
Thank you so much for the invitation. If I look at the global world for the moment, the global situation, it's a big mess. And we have common problems, but the first reflex that we have is that we think that for common problems we need national solutions, which is a big error. Because we saw it with the COVID, we see it with the climate, we see it with peace, that nothing is granted, and for common problems we need common solutions. Before being a Minister of Foreign Affairs, I was for 10 years now Prime Minister of my country, and I have to tell you that unity, in fact, which should be the principle, is every time more difficult to get. I was last week in New York for the Security Council, also for General Assembly, to speak, in fact, at this World Tribune, which is the UN, where we see division nowadays where it's even bigger than we had the Cold War, but now again a situation where you see that the influence of, and you quoted Ukraine, of situation where, in fact, you would have to choose if you support Ukraine or you support Russia. And the support from Russia is very little. And I was one of the few prime ministers to have contact also with Vladimir Putin and also with Volodymyr Zelensky. I can tell you that to accept for Russia that they did an error will be a difficult way. But so the global situation, it's a war, local war between two countries, but the impact is global. When I see the situation also, when I speak about mess and about difficult situation, when we see Gaza and we see Israel, it's the same. Nowadays you get asked, are you pro-Israel or are you pro-Palestine? I'm pro-peace. And they are both have errors. I'm still waiting for condemnation of the attacks of the 7th of October from Palestinian side. If the Israelis are not able to target the measures, if they're not able to let the humanitarian aid helping, they will lose the last support. And this is, again, it's a problem in Palestine and in Israel, but the global impact is worldwide. We see even that some people try to make it a war between religious wars, between Israelis, between Jewish and Muslims. That, again, a global situation. And I don't speak now about the Sahel. I don't speak about the situation in Central American countries. But you see, it's a big, messy world for the moment where usually we have the fact that we speak a lot about each other, but not to each other. So that's the reason why I like to be here at this forum where we are able to exchange with each other. And I spoke this morning also with Turkish responsible. They said everybody is invited. I told them, yes, that is good. Even if I have my list of people, I should avoid pictures. But it's just the fact that you are able to see everyone and to speak to everyone. And this is for the moment, and I didn't speak about climate issues, where also we have a climate dumping existing, and et cetera, but we have 6 speakers, so I think my time already is over, but just to tell you that we have global problems and we need global solutions, and we have the tendency to build walls, to close borders, to think national, when we should think global for these problems.
Thank you very much. A lot of issues I'm sure we'll come back to, and I would also encourage the other panelists to react to what they hear before. Turning to Ikli Hassani, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs for Albania, also formerly OSCE. So how do you see it from the perspective of a country which is also aiming to join the European Union? How do you see the role of the EU in the region, but also globally?
Many thanks for the invitation, and many thanks for making me part of this panel that I think I'm the only non-European amongst you, and I'm so happy to be.
You are European.
I'm non-European Unionist, but I am truly fundamentally European in all my aspects. Happy to be in such a distinguished panel with so many prominent colleagues. I'm happy to see that at least the gender balance is well kept. Unfortunately, we are women on one side and men on the other side. It shouldn't be so distinctive because in many aspects I strongly believe that multilateralism is suffering, and I can only echo what Xavier was telling. Multilateralism is suffering specifically in the last 2 decades. We have a UN Security Council that is dysfunctional, that is unable to deliver what is expected from it. We have several international organizations that cannot and are not delivering what is expected from them, and I'm mentioning here the Council of Europe, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and several other similar entities in the Euro-Atlantic, Euro-Asian space. But I can also mention that there are mechanisms where my country is aiming to join or is part of, like the European Union and NATO, that even with the problems that we have delivered and can continue to deliver, because first and foremost we share the same values that are creating liberal democracies based on the rule of law and free market economies. The world doesn't see the facts anymore in the same way. The world doesn't see the facts anymore from different corners. We have situations where we see facts and situations from opposing angles. And this is with regards to the war of aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, and the way we, the international community, in all our colors, behave and act on it. The situation in Gaza, where the atrocious attacks of Hamas were not condemned by at least Palestine at the initial stage, but at the same time we have to condemn and raise the voices for the dire humanitarian situation that is there, and also to find solutions that are always based on what we strongly believe on the two-state solution and the two peoples in the region. But also whatever is coming and whatever is being produced, it's immediately mirrored in the region I come from, the Western Balkans. It has produced wars, conflicts, including the start of the First World War in Europe. It's a region that maybe it has less than 20 million people and a modest surface, but it has always been a place of conflict, and the last bloodshed in Europe before the war in Ukraine was exactly in our part of the world. And we are still the gray zone in the stomach of Europe, as my Prime Minister would say. We are surrounded by a European Union border, but still not integrated, still behind, still struggling to develop those three elements that I mentioned earlier: liberal democracy, based on rule of law, free market economies, and aiming higher for fundamental freedoms and human rights. Now, is it so grim? Yes, it is, because it's not only about hard security. We're struggling, we're lacking, we are going behind on many issues, including climate change, the way we behave towards environment, the way we interact with global crisis, the way we went in national agendas, even for the reaction towards the COVID-19 pandemic. And what is lacking is the fact that who would have expected that in 2023, 2024, of the 21st century, we are behaving like a century ago. It's exactly the same. I see exactly the same patterns. I see exactly the same trends. The actors have changed, but situations are similar, and we really need to stick to our fundamental rights. We really need to stick to the institutions we have created, and we should not behave like instinctual entities. The human being has agreed to create the states, and the states have agreed to create the international institutions, not to be instinctual. Unfortunately, this is the new trend, and the only response to this is continued efforts to strengthen multilateralism. But I'll stop here and happy to engage further on later.
Thanks very much. I'm sure we'll come back also to the international institutions, which are very much under pressure. But turning to Angelina Eichhorst, you're Managing Director in the European External Action Service. For some of your reflections on these topics, but also what is the added value of having an External Action Service which works in common for the European Union rather than just having the member states?
Thank you very much. Very happy to be on this panel. Happy to see also many of our, perhaps slightly, we are all young, but slightly younger participants. I have a few remarks up front. I agree on the premises and the analysis, but my key question is, what do we do about it, right? This is the whole point, because we can all sit and say it is a big mess, but in fact, we have to go back, and it was already said before, to the real basics. So a few remarks up front. Your premises about immunity against global challenges is just wrong. There's nothing called immunity to anything anymore. No nation, no state, no country, no community is immune to what's happening in the world. This is very important, and you cannot immunize yourself on your own You have to do this together, and this is lesson number one. You have to work and stick together. It was said before, but I say this as a real convinced European, because after Second World War, the first result was, of course, the European Union ever expanding, ever deepening, ever broadening, ever stronger, and there's still a lot to come ahead. And this is the only solution, and I will come to the point why the 27 actually do stick together, because that is a very important point. The second part you also brought up was, what about the pace? Yes, we are too slow. You can hear the High Representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, always, every panel, every meeting, every time he says we have to go faster, we have to go with all the means we have. Absolutely. On the other hand, don't forget, and now I just take you one, COVID was mentioned, but I take you back to the financial crisis, the economic crisis, the Brexit we had, of course, the whole uprisings in the Middle East. And then from Brexit, and we went into COVID, we had huge, huge challenges. Then the Russian war in Ukraine, Gaza, Israel. And to be honest, the institutions in Brussels, they have been working at the speed of light to continue to find the right way, as coming to my point of what do you do about it? What legislation is lacking? What actions should still be done? What can we still put on the agenda? Not just in the EU, but basically with our immediate neighbors, and many of you are here around, but also in our global engagement around the world. And I think that agenda is vast, and I always try to get that across to also citizens within the EU, because I think there's too much of a sentiment across the continent, you know, we are not really at war. We are at war. There's no doubt about it, and that Brussels is not doing anything. We are doing 24/7, trying to keep, and I think we actually are quite successful in keeping that whole machinery functioning. What is still out there, and there's a lot out there, is on the global path. And that is where I think, you know, my third point comes, is we, as EU is very attractive for the moment still for 10 countries, partners lined up. You should ask them what is the attraction. I know what is the attraction, but they really want to become member, and the minister next to my side, he knows exactly what this is about. But you have to also ask yourself, why is it that so many countries line up to be part of the European Union, especially today? Especially today. It comes back to my first point, that we have to be, I don't say we have to be, we are stronger when we are together. We know this, there's a fact. So I have many more points, but I'll stop here for now. You mentioned the External Action Service. What is that? That is the State Department of the European Union, right? It is the Foreign Service, and it is actually all my colleagues under the guidance of Josep Borrell are trying to help all of us around this room and elsewhere to be for peace and not to be with or against, as Minister Bertel said, to work on security, full flight strong, but also to really make sure that the engagement we're having is a truly global engagement. This is not about EU first. This is about a global engagement where we want to make sure that all the partners who are suffering, I mean, we are all suffering from the war. The suffering from Russia's war on the continent is a global suffering. Let us be frank about that. And this is something where we work together in the work, and I think the Action Service is in itself a valuable asset, because we do this together, and it's not one foreign ministry doing one particular action. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Turning to Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, former president of Croatia. Your view on where we are, with a reflection on what you've heard already, and maybe, given your background also working with the US and NATO, some reflections on security.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Minister, first of all, yes, we are divided to both sides, but at least we have gender balance on this panel, which is a good thing to begin with. And also on what you said, that you're not still a member state of the EU, please be assured that there is a lot of us, Croatia, myself personally and many other countries and a lot of people working for you to become a member state of the European Union, because that remains very much unfinished business, that I think that in the current geopolitical situation, the European Union is underestimating, leaving this dangerous political vacuum that can be filled by third force and is being filled by third force influences which are not necessarily benevolent. Now, to go back to the global situation, we all agree that it is rather bleak, that we are in an era of not just competition, but conflict. We see rifts across societies and across the world. We see a lot of division, competition not just for resources and for supply chains, but also competition for values, which has become also a systemic competition, systemic game. We have seen the great disruptors, COVID-19, and then Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the war in Gaza, etc. So looking at the situation and again, the fact that geopolitical crises have a tendency to metastasize very quickly, which has been proven in the past couple of years, let me start with a bit of perhaps not a controversy, but something that could not logically come out of this thinking when it comes to the role of the European Union. I actually believe that this is an opportunity for the European Union to become a global player. All of these challenges that we're facing require not national but international response. Requires coordinated action, multilateralism. It requires reliance on values, on solidarity, and this is all what the European Union has been about. Yes, we don't always agree. There's 27 of us with different geography, different histories, different perspectives. So sometimes we disagree on the kind of action that we need to take, but we do agree on the common values, and they will be protected. And when I look back in time to our own experience in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Kosovo, I was actually quite amazed at the EU reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The speed and the depth of reaction and the unanimity that we were able to achieve within the European Union and the community of nations that stood up for the preservation and protection of the basic postulates of international law, state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the right of every nation to choose their own future. Also, the right to self-defense and to support everyone in that right to self-defense. And now, with all of the crises that we're facing, and let me just add to this, an element which is frequently eliminated from the discussions, or we haven't focused on it enough yet, and that is the emerging and disruptive technologies, the artificial intelligence, which presents incredible opportunities, but also a lot of challenges, where the EU has actually become the first actor to try to regulate the area, precisely because it's not focused only on ideological or only on market issues and on commercial interests, but on actually protecting population and putting issues to good use. So security has become the dominant characteristic of the foreign policy, of everything that we do. And we're seeing a paradigm shift that is characterized by shifting from responsive to proactive action. And when it comes to defense specifically, shifting from emergency response to actual defense readiness, which will be reflected in the document that is to be presented on the 5th of March on the European Defense Industry Strategy. Now, you've asked me about the transatlantic relationship. Of course, everybody is looking towards the elections in the United States in November, which could prove to be a disruptor in itself. However, it's important to note that We do not elect the US president. And I do believe in the resilience of the transatlantic relationship. And I very much agree that you cannot develop immunity, but you can develop resilience. And this is what we have to continue to build, resilience to all of these challenges. It's not going to be easy. There may be hurdles on the way, but I believe that NATO will continue to play the major role in the defense of Europe. And whatever the European Union does in strengthening its defense component, which is completely right, because we do have to stick to the obligations that we have undertaken to dedicate a certain percentage of the GDP into defense investment, and defense does remain a national responsibility regardless of alliances. So we will see strengthening of the European pillar of defense, but the transatlantic relationship will also remain essential for the security and stability of both sides of the Atlantic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And last but not least, Ana Palacio, former Minister of Foreign Affairs from Spain. One issue which has already been mentioned a couple of times is the issue of unity. How much does Europe act together? I wonder whether you could also look at this from the perspective of a slightly larger member state, which also has its distinct interests. So how does that work within the European cooperation?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you, Fabienne. I mean, it's an honor to be on this panel. And allow me to express my gratitude al Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores de Turquía de haber incluido el español como lengua oficial. We have agreed to speak in English, so don't panic. Pero sí quiero destacar la importancia que tiene. Ayer el presidente Erdogan habló de la visión de este siglo de Turquía, de esta proyección de Turquía en particular en América Latina.
Talked about the vision of Turkey and the century of Turkey, and talked about the approach to the Latin American countries. Of course, there are different countries here, and we have Spanish, but I will just switch on to English.
The interpretation is great, but today we have very little time. So you asked me about that. First, I mean, I have to react to what has been said. And yes, the world is a mess. But you know what? We Europeans tend to be self-criticizing, self-deprecating, self-everything. We have been that for a long time. We always think that it's too little, too late, too bad, and frankly, the European Union is the great success of the 20th century, and we hope to be the great success of the 21st. And this is why people, I mean, there are countries that are knocking on our door. And by the way, to the Minister of Albania, I have been there. I have been where you are. I have been, I mean, I grew up listening that Europe finished at the Pyrenees. The only founding member here is Luxembourg. The rest, I mean, Natal, you are European Commission, so you are not. What we have to say is that what we are listening in this conference, okay, we can discuss. Rules, the rules-based order is out. This is, we have, I mean, some say we have been cheated, we have been misled. It's, you know what? We in the European Union, we are created by law, with law, through law, and you can decline law whatever you want. And what did we do? What is this project about? It's not about the market. This project is political. It's about peace. It's about overcoming feuds that have been there for centuries. So frankly, this is the first thing. It's known, we know it, but today we tend to forget. Now, I wouldn't say that the European Commission and the European institutions, and I have been there, I have been a cook before being a monk, but it doesn't work at the speed of light. But it works. It doesn't work perfectly. before I went to the European Union, as a lawyer, I would criticize the quality of European legislation. When you are there, you think it's a miracle that we manage what we manage at the speed that we do. And frankly, I would not just explain the Brussels effect, but honestly, a bit of saying what's there. The Brussels effect is there. It's that what we do, what we have been working painstakingly, is now, for instance, the privacy. It's the default reference in the world. But we could go on, and this is there. And frankly, there are banners that today are humanity banners, like climate change. How long have we been there by ourselves? And I was in Copenhagen 2009. This was COP, I think, 15, probably, more or less, COP 15. How, at a certain moment, the President of the United States of America met with his Chinese and Indian, and you see this photo finish where there is no European, while the Europeans have been there. So, again, let's see what the issues are, what the problems are. One word on just expediency. When the European Union has surprised many in crisis, yes, we messed up with the vaccines, but at a certain moment, we went beyond the treaty. We went through political will, and we reached an agreement. And this is also true, the unity in Ukraine. We don't have the same unity in Gaza. You know what? We have the history we have. We are in a kind of just step between the intergovernmentalism and community, and this is difficult to manage. But honestly, this is still the best project to go together. My last comment. Okay, we have put too much trust on the soft power, on this idea that the world after 91, there is this book by a great friend and a great analyst that said Europe will rule the 21st century. Because this was this idea of soft power, of the power that we have, and we are not there. But the fact that we haven't, Colinda Greber has highlighted, and others have highlighted it, we need to come together in the hard power. We need to just see that the world has changed, that we cannot go on trusting on the American security umbrella, and that we have to invest in defense. And I will finish by quoting the Danish Prime Minister, who said, you know what, you cannot spend the €1 twice. And we have to understand that there is a price for liberty. Honestly, through rules, much maligned today, but through rules, Europe is about liberty. And now we are realizing that for this liberty, besides rules, but such prosperity that we have achieved, again, I was a candidate country. Croatia was a candidate country. Albania is a candidate country. And Spain changed. So besides prosperity, today we have to work on security. And you know what? I'm confident that we will get our act together. We will mess it a lot, not at the speed of light, but we will get there.
Thank you very much also for that note of optimism and that we will get there. But let's delve a little bit deeper, and I would ask the panelists to sort of wave at me if you want to come in, and hopefully I'll see it. But one thing which was already mentioned was global cooperation, multilateralism, rules-based order, not just for economic issues, but also for issues such as climate change. Now, given that we live in a much more confrontational world, how do we manage to convince the rest of the world that this is in their interest to have a multilateral system which functions? How do we manage to address the global public goods which we have to deliver? Also, given that many people outside the West, in its broadest sense, see the global order as very much in the interest of the West. Please. No,
That's a topic that fascinates me. But
Yeah, that sounds like a €1 billion question right now. How do we solve all this? But I do remain, essentially, I'm a transatlanticist, so I put a lot more focus on the transatlantic relationship than on the European Union. But nevertheless, I do believe in the European Union project. After all, I was the one negotiating or started negotiations for Croatia's accession, and truly believe in the value system and the fact that it started as a peace project, became an economic one, and now it is becoming a geostrategic process. So how do we convince others? The mechanisms, of course, one can use force, but the European Union is always reluctant to use any force, apart from the soft power in trying to negotiate, trying to bring about, reasoning what awaits all of us if we don't solve the issues. And there's at least two issues that we mentioned, apart from conflict resolution where we see division, but there's at least two issues where we all have the common interest. One is a time-ticking bomb, what I always call a weapon of mass destruction is climate change. So without cooperation, without continuing the process and looking at the solutions, we will have no place to live ultimately. And it doesn't go just for developed countries, it goes for everyone. So I think that the European Union can truly take a lead with that, with its ambition to become a climate neutral, the first climate neutral continent by 2050. We will see whether that gets realized. But all of these great disruptors have actually acted as catalysts for European policies. So the war in Ukraine and the overdependence on Russian energy overnight actually started a process of transitioning, of green transition, that now I dare say is unstoppable. And cooperation with other parts of the world in order to find solutions in the medium term. Now, the second issue is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence and technology is moving at the speed that is so exponential that I think, unfortunately, we're already a little bit too late in trying to regulate that area. So on the one hand, you have the United States, which is not very prone to regulate artificial intelligence and rather leaves it to the companies because they don't want to restrict the market economy and the revenue of these companies. On the other hand, you have China, for instance, which has complete control, actually, of the companies and of the control of the development of artificial intelligence. And then you have the European Union, which is trying to find that midway to combine development and control of artificial intelligence, which has already been used for many malign purposes. And we will see a huge step up in that in this year, which is an election year in many countries where disinformation and malign use of artificial intelligence will be stepped up in order to have an effect not just on the outcome of elections, but entire societies. I was just recently a victim of a deepfake video where one of the interviews that I had with a famous Croatian anchor was completely turned around, and it turned out to be me arguing for some platform for people to pay money into, so scamming, very dangerous, because a lot of people trust you as a public figure. The good aspect of all that was that it was a very prominent television channel in Croatia, so they reacted right away. Personally, I don't have the capabilities to be able to deal with it, but we will see more and more of that deep fake. And with the development of ChatGPT, with the development of other programs that can really imitate not just the language, but human emotions and interaction, the world will become a more dangerous place. And this is where I believe the European Union can do a lot to try to get all the major players together and work on regulating that aspect?
Thank you so much. You asked, why should we believe in multilateralism? You know, I grew up in peace. If I look my neighbor, in his region, they had the last conflict. But if I look my history, in my country, Germany attacked us, and we had bigger neighbors who wants to think they knew better what was good for me. Myself, if I look my own history, my grandmother is Russian. She's Orthodox. My grandfather was Polish. He was Jewish. My grandfather was Luxembourgish. He was Catholic. And my grandmother was French. She was atheist. And I'm gay. I'm married to a Belgian guy. So all these things would, even in my own country, have condemned me to death. In the past, being under Nazi regime, being liberal, being Jewish origins, being gay, etc., etc. Nowadays, through the European Union, I never lived a conflict situation. I studied in Greece. I studied in France. I studied law. I was a lawyer background, and I did an Erasmus program. Through Europe, made it possible for me to learn somewhere else. And I remember, to Istanbul. I had an old Citroën BX. You're too young for that, but this was that time. But I realized what were borders. When I went to Turkey, when I went to Skopje, when I went to Bulgaria, to see closed borders, as European citizens, I didn't know that it exists to have closed borders and to pay 5 D-Mark was at that time because I had to clean my car. I didn't have to realize that I had to take insurances when I was in Greece because I was covered by my social insurance from Europe. So all this, the problem is nowadays that we think that everything is granted, that I live in peace, that I'm able to be gay and to be elected a prime minister, that I'm able to defend journalists, that I'm able to defend minorities, that I'm able to be a feminist as a guy. All things that we think are normal, but they come because through multilateralism, we had to have common goals and do things together. And my country, as I told you, is not the biggest on the map. But through the European Union, we had a big influence together as a continent. And nowadays, when I see everything we did also about the successes, we just complain about Europe. Usually we have the tendency as European politicians, when it's a success, it's because we took good decisions. When it's bad, it's because Brussels decided. That's typical anti-European speeches, where, in fact, for example, the COVID is the best example. We spoke about the COVID before, the vaccines. I'm coming from a wealthy country. I would have been able to pay for the vaccines like that. But if it just would have been money, how do you explain to some countries, Luxembourg has it the first day, and then some other countries will be the last day? And then without European Commission, what would have we done if Germany or the countries producing the vaccines would have said, we keep them for our citizens because we don't want to share it with you because we have nothing in common. So, and this is the last thing, and we forget the euro, the roamings. I realize when I'm not in a European country when it says you already reached the limit of your data. So we forget what multilateralism brought us, these conventions, this wish to do things together, and not to accept the strengths of the strongest one or the biggest one, but to build things together. And I belong to this generation. I will fight for Europe. I will fight for values. I know we have different backgrounds, we have different histories. I don't want to say to impose. In multilateralism, it's not that I impose because I'm bigger. I say, I'm right, and you have to be like me. We are all different. But we need to see where through common goals, through common projects, we are able to come closer together. I won't change language, I won't change history, I won't change traditions. But at least for some values, for some rule of laws, for some liberties, for some women's rights, for minority rights, for press rights, for justice. And I don't want to teach other countries. Because in my own European family, I have some countries I need to repeat to them what is the liberty of justice, what is the liberty of press, what are minority rights. So for me, multilateralism is to be around the table, to see that we have common problems, to find common solutions. It's the best example is the climate change. If we think just national legislations will do something. And I remember I was Prime Minister when Donald Trump announced that he's going to resign from the Paris Agreement. I signed the Paris Agreement as the Prime Minister too. And this could have been a domino effect where everybody says, okay, we don't want. But we see it, and I'm sorry to blame our European Union now. As soon as we have problem now with agriculture, then we say, okay, but agriculture is strong and we have European elections soon, so we need to reduce our ambitions on climate questions. We just need to realize that the climate questions is something we have to take urgently, because we have poly-crisis, but one permanent crisis, which is always getting back. So now Israel is in the first page, then Ukraine is on the first page, and the climate is now not anymore on the agenda, but the next generations, they will judge us about decisions we take together. And there we have to take multilateralism. And if we see countries like Albania and other countries who wants to join the family, I'm happy. So, and they wouldn't come if it wouldn't be for stability, for peace, but also for common goals. So I belong to the founder members because we knew since the beginning, then I think it's Churchill who said, together we go maybe less fast, but we go further. And that's reality.
And exactly on what Xavier was saying, I think this panel has a problem, but I'm pretty sure that even with another combination that have the same problem, that we are convinced that the European Union is the best example on how multilateralism functions, because it's a group of countries that share not only the geography, but share values. And this is the main reason why countries like mine and others are trying to join. This is the reason why many people all around the globe are trying to move into the European Union. I haven't seen in my past anybody wishing to migrate to Stalinist Albania, but everybody was aiming to go to the European Union wherever it was. And this is the strength of such a union that brings forward values that nobody would have thought in the past that could have been so prominent and so strong. Europe used to be, for the ancient Greeks, the continent above them, that starts probably where me and myself live. Unfortunately, that part of the world is called the Balkans. I have never been to the mountain Balkans in my life. I'm really eager to go and see it one day. I've asked the Bulgarians to do us a tour there. In my youth, I've heard many times, being a guy from the Balkans, how bad it was. But we never stopped dreaming of being exactly what we are, Europeans. We are members of this family. We are aiming for this. And we are, and we think, and we aim to be Europeans without ifs and buts, without putting conditions to this relationship. We want to be part of the club. We want to join this club. We want to join this family. And we want to become better. We don't want to bring our worst. We want to get ourselves better. And getting ourselves better is by working and cooperating with all the others. If somebody would give me an example of a better combination than the European Union in international affairs, I would be very happy to listen about it. I know there are some clubs where tea and coffee is excellent and probably chocolates are very much spread, but for me, I cannot find a better example for the future of the people.
Very quickly, because I think it's good to also hear the comments from audience. You asked, and in terms of convincing, that was your question about how we, sort of the West, whatever that is convincing others. Now, I just have a very quick reflection on that, because I work for a diplomatic service where we have come to understand far better, and you know, this is really looking also at our own functioning, far better that, yes, we all share the same values. That's not it. It is recognizing what are the interests of the others. And that, I think, is very important. That has changed a lot in diplomacy right now. We don't go out to try to convince you to do this or that. except, of course, when it comes to alignment and the votes at the UN, because there we definitely want to have as many votes as possible when we strongly believe in the questions we were just discussing here. But it's far more, I see those relationships and in the global engagement changing in, sometimes, you know, you could even say there's the humbleness of, you know, stepping a bit back, listening far better to where do all the countries we want to have long-term relationships with come from, what the interests are. And I'm very glad personally, because I've been in this business for also quite some time, that we finally take these steps back and we don't go out with the hammer here and the stick there, but to have a far more mutually beneficial relationship with many of the countries. So, thanks.
Okay, well, I mean, I have proven my credentials. However, I mean, of being dyed in the wool European, as I said, I think that we share many on this panel, this idea that for us it was our life. It was a life project. Having said that, we need to also be self-conscious of that the world has changed, and that we cannot just preach in Africa, where the problem is energy access. We cannot preach that we will not finance, nor the international financial institutions, nor our whatever departments that of partnership with Africa will finance gas-generated electricity. We go to Mozambique, we buy gas to make electricity, us, but we don't finance them. So honestly, we have to understand that, yes, we stand by certain values, by certain principles, but you know, as you said, that the world is much more complex, and that in order to go for basics, we have to just eliminate many of this. The Green Deal is something on which we could reflect, but it's not the only issue. So the world is changing. We need to be part of this world in a more realistic way. Frankly, we have, and this has been also true for member states. Brussels has had this role of trailblazer, of groundbreaking, of pushing things. Okay, done. Now let's reflect. Let's see how our farmers are, how Mozambicans or Senegalese are with reason criticizing. So I'm not contradicting myself. The project in itself has to be part of the future. Now, the implementation of the project, this is where we can make big improvements. And this is a message for the institutions. Now we have elections, we have a new commission, but as Tocqueville said, les politiciens passent, les administrations restent. This is your responsibility.
Okay, we are rapidly running out of time. And I know you might have to go to catch a plane, so I don't want to continue too long. I'll take one quick question, and of course there's more than one, but I'd seen one there, so on the corner here. And please, a very quick question, not a statement.
My name is Halis El Çakmak. I am the chairman trustee of Alanya University and a businessman. And it was a very colorful discussion. And the Luxembourg foreign minister especially mentioned and stressed on the world is a mess. And I will base my questions, 2 questions, on that. Well, European Union is a very well establishment, and all the world knows, and is a very good organization. And since many years, while our president is bringing the question the world is bigger than 5. Why European Union does not support this in the United Nations? This is my question to Madam Angelina, Lady Angelina.
Sorry.
And
sorry, we only have time for one question.
Second question.
Sorry. Otherwise, we won't have a chance to answer it. So I'll just go with the one question, and I'll ask every one of you to have a 30-second response, because we are already at the end. And I'll start with Kalina, because I think you have to go. So.
Well, the European Union does support the reform of the United Nations system and stronger multilateralism, so expanding the number of members of the Security Council. And you know, when it comes to what you're probably referring to, veto power, there have been some European leaders who have suggested that when it comes to protection of human life and mass atrocities, that veto power not be used. However, in my honest opinion, I don't think that the United Nations would function without veto power, because the reality is that, yes, in the world we still have bigger countries and smaller countries, and this is why the EU is a great project for all of us to be able to exert our influence in the world. And the EU certainly will continue to work for the reform of the multilateralism, that it becomes a fair point of view where everybody is listened to and accounted for, and where we continue to work for peace and stability.
Thank you very much. My second question.
So we don't have time. It's already half past. So I'm going to give every panelist a chance. And I know, Anna, you also have to go. So.
The system, besides the multilateral system that was created after World War II, responded to the world of 45. And the most achieved, the best example of this system is the European Union. This is this idea of peace through prosperity and prosperity through exchange, which is at the core of the United Nations system. Honestly, when you read, and I finish with this, when you read the travaux préliminaires, or of the debates, both in Bretton Woods and in the San Francisco Conference, or in the Declaration of Human Rights, you see that this idea that it was imposed by the United States is far from being there. There was a big debate. The world was it was, and today we need to adapt this world to the new world. And in this new world, the European Union should have one voice. In the World Bank, we have normally 4 Europeans at the board, and I have been there. At the board of the World Bank, it doesn't make sense. You are absolutely right. Now, what we are listening is that we have to destroy this system, that this system is bad, that we have to get rid of it. No, a country like Turkey and so many others, in my opinion, what they claim is for a voice for adapting the system to the reality. And honestly, we haven't done it perfectly well. We have made big mistakes. I mentioned the blunder in energy, which is something that, you know what, makes people just still cook with whatever they can find, our position. So we are not blameless. We have a lot of things to change. And again, I think that we need cooperation. And this is what is great about this conference, is, as it was said, that we have had fruitful debates.
Angelina.
I just want you to take away that the European Union, we are not an organization, it's an entity, a legal entity, and you know it, there's no state, etc. But the largest and vastest supporter of the UN and the UN system, of the UN funds, agencies, and programs, not just in terms of financing, but all the agendas, the SDG, all the work done. So this is very, very, very much the heart of what the 27 member states do multilaterally. Who today is calling for multilateralism really strongly? It is the EU. And just to add, of course, we agree on this reflection that is ongoing about the Security Council setup, but it's really not our game at this point in time. But we do support this, that there is a stronger voice for other forces as well in the Security Council.
Thank you.
If I may finish and move a little bit from the reform of the Security Council, which it's probably a long discussion without a conclusion. I will follow what Xavier was saying. My grandfather from 1947 to 1991 lived in a concentration camp. If the communist regime didn't fall, I wouldn't have had the right to go to university. And of course, I wouldn't have been here, for sure. And myself represent just a small fraction of a whole of an Albanian society that has suffered from whatever came from Russia and China. And we will do the utmost to keep our people, our families, our children away from that. And we strongly believe and will continue to work on our dream to become members of the European Union, and I thank you for that.
I just want, you asked to be short, but so you said that Europe was not, I think Europe is the most active for peace. When I see who abstained and who vetoed in the Security Council, I can't remember when France or the UK vetoed for the last. The veto for the moment are more from Russia or from the United States. So the European Union is the one working for peace. We need just to reform the Security Council because it is, like Anna said, the world of 45. Where is Africa in the Security Council? It is not possible that we have world judges without the African continent today, but it's a fact that I think that European Union, European countries, for the moment, are the ones who are defending the most the peace project because we, like others, suffered a lot from the war, and if you look today, who is vetoing peace advances? It's not Europe, in the opposite.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we did run out of time, and we could have continued this a long time. But certainly, I think we've recognized the realities of the polyperma crisis in which we live. Now we need to draw the right consequences. We need to continue to support Ukraine. And I think we also heard about progress on enlargement. So thank you very much to the organizers for putting on this panel. For all the panelists and also to you, and I'm sorry we didn't have more chance to interact.